Thank you everybody for attending the panel. My name is Marcus Howard. I'm the CEO of Project MQ, and I'll let everyone else introduce themselves so I don't do a disservice there. But this panel is about helping everyone understand the value of indie games and the journey of indie games, and for us to give our advice to you if you're interested in getting started. I don't know if you may know this or not, but Microsoft purchased Minecraft, and before they did that, it was an indie game, a game started by independent game developers. So were other popular games like Rocket League, League of Legends, and you've probably been playing PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds. But while they are successes, unfortunately they're exceptions to the rule, and the average indie developer, is still trying to get there. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and then help you understand how to make that journey. And I'll let everyone else introduce themselves.
My name is Christian Fowler. I lead Blue Comet Games, currently working on a futuristic racing game called Acrostorm, very sci-fi inspired, very based on high speed, stuff like that, and really glad to be here.
My name is Zeke Sparks. I'm the executive producer at Blue Mammoth Games and Brawlhalla. Brawlhalla is our most well-known product. I actually started doing pen and paper games in the RPG industry too many years ago, working with Pinnacle Entertainment on Deadlands and Savage Worlds, and then hopped over to Cryptic Studios and worked on every MMO that they put out. And after that, got a chance to come back east, where my roots are, and join up with Blue Mammoth and start working on Brawlhalla.
And my name is Andrew Greenberg. I'm Executive Director of the Georgia Game Developers Association. I have my own studio with 3 partners called Holistic Design Incorporated. Like Zeke, my background is out of pen and paper. I was the original developer of a game called Vampire the Masquerade back in 90 to 95 before I started my own indie game company called Holistic Design. And we were back in the publisher era when we, the developers, would get a contract with a publisher, make a game, and then they would market it, and we were considered indie because we did not belong to any publisher. We launched with Take-Two, Microprose, SSI, a number of the great companies of that era. And in about 2005, I started the Southern Interactive Entertainment and Game Expo, SIEGE, and became involved with the Georgia Game Developers Association, which I now run, and we support studios of all types, from 400-person studios like High Res Studios, where they make Smite and Paladins, to one-person shops developing all sorts of fun games online.
Thanks everybody for your introductions. So we're just going to talk a little bit about our experiences in game development and just a round table about what we see as common themes and where we see the industry going. And I'm always inspired by the creativity and the level of polish I see from indie games. And I think one of the challenges the industry has is what is indie? It's such a broad term. You got everything from your first developer, maybe cloning a game just to understand how to program, to epic esports game like Brawlhalla, and then everything in between. So, what have you guys seen has been some of the bigger issues with indie game development?
Personally, I sometimes feel like some folks are a bit too quick to. Some of the indies are a bit too quick to chase the latest trends, like. You've seen like H1Z1, even like Pillars and Battlegrounds, and you can see like a lot of indies starting to try and like ape that a little bit. I think that's more of an endemic problem to the industry at large, but I feel like it's really particularly exacerbated within indies. Like that happened before when suddenly every indie game was 2D and pixelated and stuff like that. Like I think Shovel Knight kind of caused that boat to take off. But I say that, but I feel like it might be getting a little bit better. I'm starting to see, like you said, like there's a lot more creativity coming out these days. You're seeing some crazy stuff like you remember like Firewatch, I believe it was called. I thought that was kind of a slice of amazing. I thought it was impressive, stuff like that. And you're starting to see some games take more advantage of what they can do with the art style, even if it's like 2D or pixelated. It's not just like, oh, it's a retro thing. They're doing stuff with the color. They're doing stuff with the color palette that involves like the gameplay, and they're doing stuff with like the visual aspect of it that you can use to kind of really surprise players.
Yeah, well, I think that like what the art style is, whether it's 2D or pixelated, it's all just what your medium of choice is, right? So there's good and bad in any medium. Of choice.
And yeah, it's all about like what you can do with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing that I see is indie games are in a really exciting spot, I think, because it is easier than ever before to get started in making games. Like when I grew up looking at games, I don't even think that I thought of there being people that made them, right? Like there's some like demigods off in a cloud somewhere and the game falls down to earth or something like that. And just kind of over the years as communication has gotten faster and faster, whether it was from people being recognized and originally through magazines and articles for hobby-specific things to to forums and online and IRC chat and all the way up to Twitch where you can get instant communication with everybody that's out there. And the tools have come along with it, right? And so if you're interested in getting started in indie games, you can get a full-fledged game engine that will let you, whatever your skill level is, will let you start making a game right now, today. And that is really exciting. But it's also the thing that you have to, I think a little bit of what you were alluding to is the biggest challenge that you're going to have as an indie developer is getting your game noticed. Just by a long shot. That's going to be the hardest thing. And so, like, if you're doing something that's very similar to another game, it's just going to be even harder to get noticed, even if it's a great game.
Yeah, no, definitely. You've got to kind of get creative. Like, a lot of people don't like to do this, but like, I feel like one of the more important parts of being like an indie developer that gets overlooked more often than it should is marketing.
Yeah. Yes.
A lot of indie developers just want to like make a game. They get an idea like, oh, I got this great idea for a game and it's going to be amazing. It's going to be popular and everybody's going to notice it. And then some people will actually like make this great game and it's going to be amazing. And guess what? Nobody knows.
Right. It happens far too often. And I think that's a part of the issue with the definition of what is an indie developer. So when we started, an indie developer just meant you were not owned by one of the large publishers. Right. And we could set our own path. We had nobody in marketing, nobody in PR. I mean, it was lucky that I was up on Genie and AOL to promote our games way back then. But that's changed, and now there are a lot of arguments over the definition.
Yeah.
But I tend to think what an indie game developer is someone who is independent of other people's decision-making on the overall game design. There aren't marketing to have to do, there aren't sales coming and telling them they might work with these groups, they work with publishers, distributors, whatever. But they have an independent design process, independent of most outside influences. And it's critical now for those companies to have that marketing ability and the teams that can make this happen. And this is why I'm so impressed by what Marcus, you're doing with Project MQ. An indie developer is hard-pressed to provide those services for themselves. And what Project MQ is doing very well is creating an alliance of game developers who can support each other's efforts. Project MQ could do some of this, but really it's a community of game developers that can make it happen and become their own marketing group for independent developers.
I appreciate that. I'm glad you can benefit from it.
Yeah, definitely. It's proven to be a very big boon on me because like normally, like I've been having like some difficulty like being able to come out here was all because of you. Wow. So I'm very much grateful for it. But like you said, yeah, there's a lot of people out there who like don't get quite this lucky, and it's going to be like they'll go like on Twitter and on Facebook and they'll try and do that a little bit and they'll call that marketing.
Right.
Which it is to an extent, but there's going to be nowadays that's not really
it's not even building your market at that point, much less marketing to that market.
Yeah, it's kind of like you need to get like you need to get people playing your game. You need to get people knowing it. Like Twitch is kind of like the big Twitch and YouTube are like the big things nowadays. I feel
and Mixer.
But really though, any live streaming service that has like a decent number of people on, I feel like would be like your best bet nowadays because people are all about like that instant feedback, instant gratification, instant everything, and you need to know what's going on, and they won't. Yeah.
I think that winds up being they are really great tools if you approach them in the right way. And one of the things that I think it's super exciting. Like there are more and more of these organizations that are helping smaller studios because there's more studios, there's more indie developers getting together, and so there's a need for people to come in and help them promote their games, and so that's growing too. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do, but you have to you have to go into it with a plan. Like you have to think about, like the biggest challenge I think is you have to think not just as a developer of a game, but you also have to think about the business side of the game too. So you have to have a plan. So like going on Twitch and YouTube is awesome. I could talk for hours about what Twitch has done for at least for
Zeke is very twitchy.
It's true.
Yeah.
I can talk for hours about what it's done for Blue Mammoth for game development. But in my opinion, if you just get on and you play your game, okay, that's cool. Some people will see it, but you have to have a plan with what you're doing with that tool. So, like for us, we want that instant feedback. But one of the hard things is, are people going to like my game? Are enough people going to get behind it that it's going to start getting noticed? Well, you can start finding that out with Twitch, right? Like you can get out there, you can play the game, you can show it to people, get immediate feedback on what they like and what they don't like, and then you have to filter it because just taking raw feedback in is can be really tricky. But you filter that in, and then if you're willing to adjust the game and work with that information that you're getting, you have a much better chance.
Come on.
You have a much better chance of getting something that's gonna hit.
That's exactly true. We're live streaming our Fading Suns Noble Armada game that's currently in development. So we're live streaming the playtest. You think this is the exact opposite of what you ever want to do is show a game before it's ready. But I found the exact opposite experience, getting great feedback. Yeah, stuff's broken. People know stuff is broken. It's not got the best polish yet. That feedback's incredible. The audience you're building is incredible. And we're looking forward to start live streaming board games as well. People developing board games, playtest sessions. I think that's exciting because not only are the developers getting feedback, but the viewers are getting a first look at something nobody else has seen.
Yeah, people really like that. I found that as long as you present it in the right way, even if something bugs out and glitches out, that can actually be a very positive thing because that makes people laugh and that makes people interested in it. Hey, I want to even if it's just to see a couple more bugs that may get fixed, or who knows, you might even find a bug and people say they like it and you might decide that, hey, I can make that a feature somehow.
Yep. Right.
And there you go. And suddenly people have a reason to be like, hey, yeah, I kind of influenced this. I kind of and they get an emotional investment in it that way. I've seen that happen more than once.
Right. I think you see that in general with millennials today. They want to be more involved with the brands. They want to participate in the experience of the product. And
Which
I think game development and tools like Twitch allow people to be a part of a backstage pass.
Yes.
Yeah. And who doesn't love backstage passes? Who doesn't love seeing their favorite bands and their favorite stuff off the stage?
Well,
it's a real experience.
Yeah, not always though. As in indie, I think when you're doing those things, you want to approach it from a very genuine standpoint, right? Don't worry about a persona. Don't worry, just be yourself. Talk. Don't try to hide things. Don't try to trump things up. Because how many stories have you heard about somebody that met their favorite musician and they're like, man, that person was an ass.
Yeah.
But with that behind the scenes look, I think what's special about the connectivity that we have now as indie developers is if you build it in a genuine way, if you approach it just very straightforward and honest, you're not just showing off your game, you're not just getting feedback, you're actually building a community of people that see you as a human being and are excited about the things that you're doing.
And the excitement, that's an important part. One of the big secrets, I hate that it's a secret about the game industry, is it's a passion industry. It's a passion on the creator side, because it ain't easy. And it's a passion on the player side, because often that's not easy either. But it is when those passions meet favorably that we're great. It's when they meet negatively that everybody thinks it's a toxic, awful environment. But when they meet favorably, it's incredible. So that has to be communicated from both sides.
As long as you can avoid the toxicity, I think, all criticism can be constructive criticism. There's always something that a learning opportunity for you to improve what you're doing based on the feedback you get.
I've got a mental switch that I flipped for that, and the secret is, it took me years of game development to get there, but the secret is, even the really toxic brains, even the people that are just railing on the game and they won't stop, are people who really care about
That's
the game.
very true.
They don't care about the game, they just go away.
You never had the experience that you had people calling you in the morning to do their vampires, and you either got vampirism really right or really wrong.
Yes.
Those were always the most amusing calls I got from having a listed number.
Yeah, not a lot of good cowboys.
So Marcus, I'm a little curious. You guys identified some real needs in the indie development community. and you sought to fill them. What were those needs, and how did you think you could help?
Well, we got inspired because we actually tried to create our own game. And as we were working on it, we realized that it didn't matter if we finished it because we're just two people and we don't have the marketing dollars to buy TV ads or radio ads. So we built a solution we thought that we would need if we had the bandwidth to finish our game. And what that is for developers, now that we've been doing this for almost 4 years, is helping them understand, shift away from that starving artist mentality. And like you said earlier, really think of what their passion project as a business. And with business, we like to subscribe to the lean startup methodology, right? So that you always have like a prototype, an iterative prototype, so that you can learn quickly from your mistakes and improve. And that's what we're doing now, is helping developers learn how to do that for themselves. Because unfortunately, there's a lot of scammers in the industry as well. People who can promise you 1 million views or whatever, and they just really can't deliver. And so there's a lot of distrust, and we're trying to fix that as well.
Well, and it also, one of the things that we've always looked for when we partner up with groups like that is, 1 million views is great, but if they're not even close to your target,
Right.
it doesn't matter, right? There's going to be 1 million people that aren't interested, and so like having people, it's always been helpful for us to be able to go to groups like yours to have people to help kind of navigate. Well, who are you even trying to get this in front of? Like, what is it? It's not just about numbers, unless they apply to something. Don't really.
Right.
It doesn't matter how they.
And I actually think it's something that Blue Mammoth has done very well, because you guys started with a very small studio, passion projects. It wasn't even Brawlhalla, the first
That's
one.
right.
And definitely learned from Dungeon Blitz, developed that, put together a team, stayed independent. I mean, yes, there was some outside support for you, but the leads made their decisions, weren't reliant on anyone else, went with what they saw working, learned from mistakes, iterated, and made something that when I first got to play, 2 years ago, I guess? Something like that?
You probably played it longer ago than that.
3 years ago. It was a while ago. And it was a fun game then, and now it's so much more. You just keep building on it. I should show you, a Brawlhalla. And has done such a good job, but stayed independent the entire way through. The decisions and the mistakes are your own, and you claim them on both sides.
Yeah, and that's something that we learned. The core of that group also was from Cryptic. The two founders of the studios were from Cryptic. We worked well together as a team, and that's one of the things that I think is important to pay attention to when you have a small group of people. You have to have a small group of people that work really well together, right? And you don't want the same mindset, because you want people thinking in different ways and coming up with different solutions.
Right.
But you need to make sure that you can work together well. And once you get that core going, everybody's going in the same direction, and you'll all have different ideas of how to get there. But everybody's kind of on the same journey.
Right.
And I mean, Brawlhalla, actually, the first time we showed it, man, we thought we had it solved. This is like, nobody's doing this right now. You can't get it on PC. We can do it. We've got experience. We can learn from what we did on Dungeon Blitz, and you can go. We can go. And it's funny because when you go back and look at it, it's totally different. It wasn't character based. You would set like a crate that you would pick your weapons from, and so you could use all the weapons in the game. You put it in this crate, and you get it at random. You get like hats and vests and stuff to outfit your character. And we showed it off, and you have to not just want feedback as an indie developer. You have to listen to it and ingest it, because the feedback that we got, people were like, "This is really fun. I have a lot of fun, but who am I? What is my character? What is It was just very clear after we showed it at PAX East like 3 or 4 PAX East ago. And it was very clear when we got back that people wanted characters to identify with.
Yeah.
And so we shifted entirely. We're now totally character driven. Like, you don't piece together anything. This character uses these weapons, and it took us a long time to figure out that that's the direction that we needed to go. But you have to have that kind of flexibility, because I think with like larger studios, you can approach it from a different angle, right? You can do lots of R&D at the beginning to try to figure out what is going to be a good, valid, cohesive product at the end. And usually that's a very costly experience.
Right.
You've got a lot of expertise going into that, and it's great if you do it. We did that at Cryptic, and it works great. But With indies, like your advantage is that you can go faster and you can be more agile and you can respond. And that works really well if you're willing to respond.
Right.
If you're just going with like the first idea that you had and you're going to get it to the finish point as fast as you can, you might get lucky. It might be just what you needed to do. But the chances are pretty slim unless you're actually paying attention and shifting courses.
I think you hit something really important on there when you said, no, don't just listen, but interpret.
Yes.
Because what people say they want and what they really want are two different things. I mean, the classic example is, you nerfed the paladin, or something like that. It's like, I'm not saying nerfed it, but I'm not having a fun experience playing it. Why am I not having a fun experience playing the paladin anymore? What can be done to make the paladin fun?
Yeah.
So it's always, what they're venting about is often not the real problem, and being willing to listen further and deeper, even when they're ranting, to figure out what the real issue is critical.
Well, I think you have to help gamers understand how to communicate that information. Because
true.
I think, if you're playing, not to bash on AAA games, but if it's Halo or whatever, you don't probably aren't going to have the opportunity to speak with the developers.
Yeah.
So your feedback doesn't matter generally anyway.
I mean, you might get lucky. You might get lucky and like catch them on like a forum, but that'll be about it, and they're not going to be there all the time.
Yeah.
But I've seen even on his game on Steam, Acrostorm, he's had people who reviewed his game and then said, I'm changing my review because I posted these bugs to fix them. And I've seen like the response. I'm sure you guys do the same.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important point, especially for indies, really at the AAA's A level, but especially in indies. Your role isn't just designer. You are the fan's advocate every step of the way. You are the player's advocate. And it's hard to make this mindset change. You come and think, I can design a great game, which no one want to play, or I can make the right game that I enjoy making, and the people I want to enjoy my game will enjoy and make it work best for them. And then when the game ships, it goes to, if you're a bigger company, the community manager. They become the player advocate. In a small studio, it's still the designer who's the player's advocate.
Yeah.
Wear all the hats.
Yeah, I was actually about to say that you have to wear like a lot of hats as an indie dev. Like sometimes even if you're, in my experience anyway, sometimes even if you're like supposed to be like, I'm just gonna do like 3D art, maybe you have like a team and you want somebody else to like handle the programming. Chances are, no, you're gonna do something. You're gonna like point out something. You're gonna end up like at the very, even if it's just like pseudocode.
Oh yeah.
Like if it's just pseudocode, you're gonna be doing something related to programming one day.
That's one of the reasons that I went back into. I mean, Cryptic is not a huge studio, right? But it was big. And when we got to team sizes of 100 plus or whatever, was when I started not recognizing everybody on the team and realized that day to day, there's a really good chance I would never touch the game. Like I had people on a team that were doing stuff, and I talked with them and make sure everybody's going in the same direction and everything. And but I don't have my hands on the game. And so aside from just getting back closer to where I'm from, having to get into the game and fix something just because you're the one that noticed it, so you know where it is. And so you can either go describe it to somebody and they can figure it out, or you just get in there and fix it right now. So that's one of the things that I love is your brain is constantly in different modes. Like as an indie developer, you have to think about the game design, and then you have to actually do implementation, and then you have to think about the business side, right? And then you have to interpret the player feedback, which one of the things that we always say is if they're giving feedback, they're not always really good. Players aren't always really good at describing what the problem is. But they're really good at identifying where a problem is, even if it's not where they say it is. Like if the more constant the feedback is about there being an issue, the more likely that there is something there. And so it's not just what are they saying? It's why are they saying that? Where is the frustration point really coming from? And so using player feedback to identify where the problems are is I found it to be a much better approach.
And this is very interesting for fans in general. What we're seeing more and more at the Game Developers Association is that companies like Blue Mammoth, Hi-Res Studios, Tripwire are hiring more and more out of their player community rather than just going to headhunters and saying, find me a new programmer. They want people who already have that knowledge of what they're doing, that intimacy with the product, that desire to be involved. And as a fan, those of you who can really communicate effectively with a company, not the ranters, those who show they're intelligent and have good communication skills are the ones who come in QA, bug testing, community management,
Yeah.
or even programming, artist and design jobs.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
we've got 4 people that we've hired out of the community, and we're an 18-person, 20-person studio, so that's
So it's
pretty big
20%.
percentage. Yeah,
It's like an unofficial interview process.
yeah,
They volunteer themselves to do that.
yeah.
Again,
Absolutely.
you want that kind of passion.
Yeah, for sure.
So, what do you think about the recent trend of the larger publishers creating like their indie movement?
Oh
Like indies, like indie spin-offs, like
Childlike.
Yeah, I was about to go
EA
there.
originals or
Yeah.
Square Enix collect.
They're art house games, art house games.
Yeah, I would actually call them that more than indie games. Art house is actually a good description. It reminds me of like art house movies, which is like you have Sony and you have like a bunch of bigger studios making like art house movies like that. And as for what I think of it, I personally don't mind it. I've seen like a lot of. I feel like it's you gotta remember, like you said earlier, like those people who are at those big companies. Many of them are probably, I would say, like just as creative as we are, but they're bound by a lot of other, they're bound by like a lot of laws and stuff that they need to abide by. And so, if they get a chance to like make these smaller art house games, that's a chance for them to stretch their wings just all the same. Now, yeah, it kind of squeezes us, but it's interesting to see what could come from like if like someone small like us could manage to actually get like a larger budget or something like that. I feel it's interesting, whether it's good or bad. I feel like that's left for philosophers, but I think it's very interesting, and I don't oppose it.
So so I love it. I think it only adds
Right.
to everybody. So the way I kind of think about it is games. I don't feel there's as much direct competition with games as people think there is.
Right.
Right. I mean, look at like League of Legends is a juggernaut, right?
Yeah.
Dota 2, no problem. They've got their own audience, very similar approaches to games, big budget AAA games, but they coexist. They coexist
Right.
fine. And in the indie space, I think it's even easier because the gameplay times tend to be shorter, right? So like Child of Light, I think is awesome because there's a whole audience of people that love their studios, right? And they'll follow whatever the studios are doing.
Yeah.
Like anything that the studio does, they're going to look at it. And usually they're exposed to big AAA experiences. And these more condensed, whether you want to call them art house or indie or whatever, these smaller team, more focused, look at like one thing that they think is a cool idea or they think is a cool mechanic and kind of not build a 60-hour game around it. Just build a small little game around it and put it out there. I think that only winds up exposing players to a new style of game, a new kind of game, which now they can find a catalog of hundreds of games that they might be interested in.
And 2 other great points following up exactly on that. First of all, remember that Portal began as a college student project,
Right, yeah,
and suddenly
it
it's
was.
Portal, which is a wonderful game. And secondly, you talked about passion before. Really, I think 99% of game developers got into game development because there was a game they didn't see out there that they could make and they wanted to play.
Right.
And for all of us, in the end, the goal is having more great games to play, whether they're made by us or somebody else.
Yeah.
So I'm always excited to see more good games from anybody.
So, what would your piece of advice be for someone who's trying to get into the industry, or maybe hitting the first roadblock? What's something you wish someone had told you before you got started?
Well, for us, I wish we'd had a Georgia Game Developers Association when we started, because we can offer all these connections, all this support. We have constant training. Next week, we do 4 days of Unity training on our live stream channel. So, have Unity experts coming out to talk game development. At the end of that, you should really have the skills to make a game, or if you're already into Unity, we'll have a lot of chances to answer questions. I actually started the Siege convention because there just was no way around here to bring everyone together. We go to Game Developers Conference out in San Francisco once a year, but then when we were, there wasn't really anything. So I think my 2 major points of advice are twofold. 1, work your ass off, and 2, when you're not working, network with folks who can help you solve your problems, be it Project MQ or other developers.
Right.
Yeah, on a similar note, like get out there, do stuff, get involved. There's so many tools you can get into right now. Don't wait for the perfect idea to come or for you to have this perfect plan of what you're going to do. get out there and do it. Like some of the best hires I've seen in the industry over all the different companies that I've worked at come from people who did modding, right? And these are people who are passionate enough to go out there and start building on something that they love, and they're actually doing the work, they're building it. So you get to see, oh gosh, I think making 3D models would be awesome. You get to do it. Did you think it was awesome? Maybe, maybe not. And if you did, great, you know what you want to do. If you didn't, okay, maybe you're more into texture. Maybe you're more into level design, whatever. You get to try it out. But there are so many tools, there's so many organizations, there's so many communities that you can get involved with people who are going to be super happy to help you out, who are going to be there to encourage you, and who can get you actually starting the process to see what game design is all about. And if you like all of that, then you just keep going. You just keep doing stuff.
Yeah, like related to those things, I would say like my biggest piece of advice from like personal experience and people I know is try and get your hands involved in everything, but at the same time, don't be too proud to ask for help. Don't be too proud to like a lot of people. I personally know like a lot of people who want to be like the next, Cave Story. That Pixel, he made the game by himself. Like, have you heard of Dustin Legion Tale? He made the game mostly, if I recall correctly, by himself. It took him years, and they're great games. But it took a whole lot of sacrifice, a whole lot of personal sacrifice. And while that can be commendable, it can also be unnecessary and damaging for some people. I mean, if you can do it, okay. But I don't feel like it's always necessary. So don't be too proud to ask for help. Don't be too afraid. Go on forums. There's tons of people who will probably be willing to like help you out, whether for free or if you have money, preferably if you have money. You can like maybe like hire someone, and there's no shame in that at all. Get a team. Like if you have a great idea, and as long as you can, and in my opinion, as long as you can like contribute something like directly to that, if you can do something like whether you use art or program, or music or anything like that, music would be music is actually very underrated. But I digress. I could go on that. Get a team together. Don't be afraid about that. Ask for help. Like you said, like network. Do things with others. Get out there. Become the next great studio.
There you go.
So I think one of the biggest
Wait, you didn't answer that question. You can't just throw it out there. You're as involved as everyone else.
All right. So I haven't done
What's your word of advice? Follow Project MQ. That's the first part of it.
I haven't done much game development here in 4 years because that's when we shifted over to Project MQ. But I would say, I wish I sought out more advice from people who knew what they were doing, like you're saying, because they say making a mistake is much less expensive. If you read from someone else, learn from someone else's mistake is much less expensive than you make it yourself.
Right.
That's actually like I'll jump on that in a heartbeat.
Go ahead.
Because just real quick, don't be afraid of a mistaker. Find the mistakes and failures. Find them as fast as you can.
Mistakes.
Don't protect them and hold off and try to make it work. If it's not working, hit it, find it, and then figure out why and move forward from there.
Yeah, mistakes can be good, if only as like learning experience. Oh, also kind of like to piggyback on your piggybacking. If you have an idea and you do work on it and you find like it's just not quite working, don't be afraid to this is gonna sound like kind of rude. Don't be afraid to kill it in the cradle. I mean, ideas in and of themselves can be kind of like a dime a dozen. Don't be afraid to like toss it out and try something new. Don't get too attached.
I agree with the point, but I disagree with the kill it in the cradle thing. And same with you. Put that in the back file. Put it in another file because 3 years later it might come into some.
I can respect that. Yeah.
We call them failures. We call them mistakes because we couldn't implement them right now.
But someday.
It may come in or will influence something that's of value. I've had that happen innumerable times. Things, characters, settings, ideas, whatever. I can't do anything with this. Bam, it's useful.
I can agree with that. I'll admit that to that.
The other piece of advice I probably wish someone told me was not to chase shiny objects. Just because it's the trend doesn't necessarily.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of saying. Don't.
We tried to do a VR extension of Project MQ, I guess like 2 years ago. ago because
VR.
Oh yeah, those are two good letters.
We are the. You remember
but $15,000 later, we didn't have anything to show. We have code that will work at some point, but that wasn't the best use of our resources at the time.
Right.
We probably should have put those somewhere else.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing that I really love about Beer and how they approach games is they don't. It's just still just two guys, right? And they don't try to make the fullest, most complete game that they can possibly think of, right? They find the thing that is good.
I feel like they
the
have
thing,
Yeah.
and they make the game about that thing.
Right.
And that's it. They don't. It's so tempting to start adding. Well,
You're
okay, well I'm gonna. Well, but now we need boss fights, and now we need this other thing, and now we need PvP, and now we need this. Lift Rousers is so much fun because it is just a very, very well executed arcade shooter, right, with its own twists. And that is so much better than making pretty good, brawls.
Exactly.
It feels like they kind of sit down and they go, what would be awesome? This thing.
Yeah.
And then they make the entire thing game around that one thing, like you said. Like it's just like, this is awesome.
This is the greatest strength and greatest weakness of being indie. You don't have any marketing department coming in saying, this is the latest thing, you have to add this to whatever you're doing, gotta gold plate it. But by the same token, there's no one there telling you, don't add anything else. Just folks, there are a couple of business terms for this. One common one is most viable product, MVP. Figure out what that core thing is and focus on it. On the negative side of it, I always say, don't gold plate. Yes, you can make great AI, great physics, great levels, great everything, but you don't have time and the money.
Yeah.
If you're an indie, focus on the thing you do well, make that work.
We tried to add story mode to Brawlhalla at one point, which we would all love to do. It would be great because we've got so much lore and story in there.
Great characters.
And we were like, we were looking at fighting games, and we were like, a lot of times it's just like, fight like 3 or 4 fights, and there's some dialogue in between it. We can do that. And we started doing it, and we were like, it's just not fun. It just doesn't fit with the game that we're making, and so we had to be like, okay, well, look, if we do this, that's a real feature. It's a full feature. It's gonna take a lot of time.
Yeah, it's gonna take
So future us
Yep.
can reevaluate
Backburner.
this, but right now we do not need that to make the core game better.
Right.
And that was a hard decision.
So we've got a few minutes left before we open up for Q&A and shift the conversation over to board games. What is the best opportunity that you see for the industry as far as indie games? I think it's going to be educating gamers about, again, the quality and the opportunity and the uniqueness of indie games. Kind of shift that consumer perception. So they kind of more appreciate it as almost like a modern interactive art form.
Yeah, I kind of feel like the best opportunity is, mostly education, because I feel like a lot of people who play games, and a lot of people who would even call themselves enthusiasts, aren't quite clued into how games get done. So there's a bit of a disconnect between the reality and the hopefulness for a lot of situations. But I do feel like that for the people who do get that knowledge, they get really, really invested, and next thing you know, they're the ones who are downloading Unity or trying out Unreal, and they're eventually getting into game development, and they're figuring out what they want to do and how they want to do it. And next thing you know, they're out there publishing games. They're right there in the trenches.
Yeah. Those are both really good points. I think it's the infrastructure that's coming up behind developers. We've had an explosion of the ability to create indie developers and indie games. But with that, we've created the ability for all of those people to make the same mistakes over and over.
That's kind of
it's hard to fit all that in your head. And so the fact that we've got groups like yours, Marcus, coming on that are able to kind of pull studios together and add advice and a little bit of direction, and just making sure that indie developers know that they have to answer the question, how is your game going to get seen over the other 30 games that are going to release, right? And I do not think we're anywhere near saturation of games for consumers. I'm not afraid of that at all.
Right.
But what we are at is a point where there are the ability to make them is in the hands of so many people that it's very easy to not think about
Yeah.
visibility
Right.
of the game. And if you don't think about the visibility, then that's where you're going to be in a problem spot. So this infrastructure coming out with or GDDA helps with this too. Just getting people together and saying like, oh, okay, that idea you have for a game is super awesome. I would love to play that game. Okay, how's your, elevator pitch isn't quite the right word, right? But it's like, okay, well, how are people going to see that game? Is that going to be something that they notice out of the crowd of their games and latch on to? And that's just kind of one example of where that infrastructure growing, I think, is really exciting.
To build on that is also the idea that the indie gamer is becoming the norm. So 20 years ago, being a gamer was still an oddity. Now, gamer is the vast majority.
Yeah.
Not being a gamer makes you an oddity. But most of the people are still Grand Theft Auto, great game, Madden, great game, but from the big studios. But more and more of those people are now trying indie, and at some point, we're at that tipping point where no longer is indie gamer a minority within fandom. It is what being a gamer has become. And I want to really bring up a point you brought up before, Zeke, about games don't compete against each other. I own so many different games. We're not really in direct competition with each other, but we are still in direct competition with things like TV. We're fighting for a person's disposable time more than a disposable income. And that's what matters. And we're all, indie gamers especially, are supporting each other as we bring people into an interactive activity as opposed to a passive activity, which we all believe is something of value.
All great answers. So thank you for your time. And before we close out, open discussion about board games. Do you have anything you would?
Whatever questions you've got.
No, but I do have kind of, and I know that this is in no way the same thing at all, but when you were talking about marketing, I have seen kind of like a resurgence in people really being involved in these games, and I kind of want to say that it started with like Herman Quest, like bringing in like Dungeons and Dragons, like this huge, like all of my friend groups are playing it now.
Right.
Which is kind of, I never saw that coming.
Yeah.
But I do
Not after
think-
4th edition, we didn't.
But I think, when like you have somebody like
Felicia.
Felicia Day. Yeah.
like she's,
Oh,
this
great, yeah.
indie starlet,
Yeah.
and you have things like her being on a TV show, or not TV show, but a show like Herman Quest, and it's bringing kind of this light to
Sure.
gaming of any kind.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the guild kicks it off, and then we have tabletop.
And there's Twitch is really, I've loved seeing it grow on Twitch like wildfire, because I started in pen and paper industry, which is if you think indie games or video games is hard, pen and paper is just it's just as hard, and all the margins are just smaller. So
Do you think like having like brand reps like that, like not saying that she's a brand rep, but just having people like that bring light to
Pop
every
stars.
game?
I do, and I think that there is a genuineness to it now that makes that work. There was an interesting Twitch had an interesting thing where they were talking about this. Dovetails in a little bit, where they were talking about the mid-tier streamers that are getting 100 to 300 concurrent viewers. Actually, percentage-wise, push more games than the most popular streamers, and part of that is because it's a little bit more connected. It's more genuine in a way that it's more like it's way easier for me to sit on my couch and get my buddies next to me to buy this game that I'm showing them that I love than it is for me to stand out in the middle of that show floor and yell at everybody, even if they're all listening to me, and tell them to go buy a game. And I think Felicia Day is she's so genuine. And there are others like her too, right? Like, I would love for her to play Brawlhalla. That would be like the best thing in the world. But it's not the same as if I went to her and was like, hey, would you please play Brawlhalla? Can we come up with some sort of deal? Let's do it, which that kind of marketing does work. But I think her strength and people like her, their strength is that everything she does, you can tell it's because she loves it, right? And on Twitch, there's all these channels talking about D&D is kind of just spreading everywhere. There's all these channels that are playing D&D that have found that pen and paper games are perfect for Twitch too. So it's bringing this kind of awareness that is spreading out in this. I mean, at the core, we make stuff that's fun,
Right.
right? And
Right.
so just if you can get enough people to look at it and think that, oh yeah, that would be fun too, which not everybody will, but the more you get people kind of circulating that info, the better it is.
There's so much legitimacy lacking in marketing and public life in general.
Yeah.
And we find legitimacy like that. It's of great value that she, Will Wheaton, and others are promoting something that they love because A, they have the skill set to do it, they have the resources to do it, and again, the passion kicks in. This is something they love and matters deeply in their lives. Same reason we're making the games. So hopefully we have the resources to do it. Sometimes we have the resources to do it. But, and I think that stays key throughout, and I think most gamers are very aware when that legitimacy is lacking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This goes back to board games, I'm so sorry.
No, it's-
Something that you guys said that like really struck hard was just focus on one thing and don't be great at one thing and not mediocre
Right.
at a lot.
Yeah.
And I think where that hit me was I hate expansion packs.
But you have every Settlers.
Huh?
But you own every Settlers of
I
Catan.
own every But like King of Tokyo, brilliant game.
Yep.
Like
Yeah.
the best shit talking
I'll
game.
kick you out of
Yeah,
Tokyo.
that's right.
And,
The best.
Yeah.
But then the moment you add all the expansion packs, you're just like, I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. Like there isn't a focus. There's not a. And
Right.
so, what do you guys think of expansion packs? Are there things like this for your indie games? Like, and so many people disagree with me.
Ooh,
So-
that's a scary question
Well,
for me because
for
we had a new
digital,
character
yeah.
every 5 to 6 weeks, and that's how we do.
I'll say there are two major points to this. One is how well you integrate it with what currently exists. I mean,
Yeah.
you put it in again because you've got something core that works. They've got a core fighting thing. And then the other part is how ignorable is it? So when we did pen and paper games, we have all these supplements come out. And some of all these fans saying, I've got to know all this stuff and all these hundreds of books. So, exactly. So we make this big point with our Fading Suns line is no, throw out whatever you don't like and just keep those parts that you enjoy. And if a player starts complaining, I want to add this, and you don't have it, you don't want it, it doesn't go in. The universe of your own. When we started the Fading Suns universe with a computer game that could end up in a million different outcomes. And we really encourage the game masters to start the role-playing game from that point. And if they had a whole different result, different Emperor of the Worlds than what we come up, run with that and make it real and just pull characters from our stuff to flesh out what you're doing. And I think that's true in video games too. They have characters that are great, but I, as a player, I've got my core that I like, and maybe I'll add a new one, and maybe I won't.
Yeah, and that's I think the integration is a really good example, right? Because you'll see big lines like D&D did D&D Next, right? After 4th Ed, because it went and expanded and it got really big, and then they were like, oh, okay, well we need a really simple entry point for people that just want to get in. So they did that. Magic the Gathering, right? They've got the core block and that rotates, so you only have to pay attention to what's they've got to have hundreds of thousands of cards in the whole. That might be too many. They have a lot of cards in the whole set, right? But you only need to listen to this amount. But it's a challenge for us because we keep adding to our game, and we have to keep an eye on making sure that we present it in a very easy and accessible way.
Right.
And so we are almost at the point where, with our characters, we are probably past the point with our characters where we have enough of them that we need to find.
You
better
can't retire
sorting.
mine.
Yeah. Oh no, we won't. We're not retiring anybody, but we need to find better sorting methods to get you like the ones that you care about are mostly these first 10. And then the 20 or so that are over here, you don't have to worry about as much.
Because you
Here's
wanna-
what really care
You want to
about.
support the completist.
Yeah.
There are folks who love what you do, want to stay with it, want to support
And
it.
they want more.
Yeah.
They're always going to want more.
Yeah, and I think as long it's to me as a gamer, it's if somebody is adding something valuable to the game that they're still excited about and into for the game, then I think it's great. Like Crusader Kings 2.
But if it's just
I
kind of like
love
something.
that game. And every single pack that they put out, I want. Why do I need it? Absolutely not. At this point, it is basically like a simulation of the world, right?
Right.
Like I'm playing my kings over in Europe. Do I have to have the Aztec pack? Did they need to add the Aztec pack? Yes, they did. Because it's not legit. If my king, there was no chance that the Aztecs invaded me if I played without that pack. That's not fair. but that's kind of their thing, like that level of gritty detail. So
Yeah.
even, it makes sense as they keep adding it. As long as it fits, as long as it adds something that your players are into, that they're looking for, I think, finding a way to. Now they could.
Unforgettable.
Right.
Yeah, like if it's just something that is going to be.
Cool, I got it.
Yeah, if it's just something that really I don't feel like fits along with the world. Like this is gonna sound like kind of weird because I feel like a lot of people like this, but if you play like Fallout, like stuff like the Mothership Zeta pack,
Okay.
I always felt like yeah, that's wacky, that's fun. But I personally like when I tried it out, I was kind of like, okay, this kind of takes a little bit away from what Fallout is supposed to be. Like it's kind of like I personally wasn't a fan of it. So and I feel like and in general I kind of feel like expansion packs that are very clearly just trying to like prolong the life of the game without really like if it's kind of like more of the same. The way I always kind of like look at it, it feels like either A, you could have gotten that in the base game and it would have been like very like unique or helpful, then you probably shouldn't have put that in an expansion pack. You probably should have put that in
It feels
the base game.
exploitative and not legitimate.
Yeah, that's a good word for it. It feels exploitative. Or B, if it's something like, and I know, like, considering League of Legends, I'm probably horribly in the wrong here. If it's just like something like skin packs, I've never really been like the biggest fan of skin. Well, correction, we're buying skin packs. I don't mind skin packs if you just like release it for like either like super cheap or nothing. But I kind of feel like, yeah, like you said, like an expansion pack has to have like something like valuable and integrated very well into like the core experience.
And I want to take exception to what you said. It's not forgettable. Never make anything that's forgettable. Make it ignorable.
Oh, okay.
Never make anything forgettable.
Yeah, like if you're going to actually play it, have it stick out in your head. Have it keep.
I've made things that I wish people would.
I never
It wasn't on
have.
purpose though.
So kudos to you, Andrew. I heard earlier from Malcolm, I think, that in Georgia now, programming counts as a foreign language.
That's right. This
Really?
is something that works very closely with the state because we don't have nearly enough people taking programming classes on a K through 12 level. I programmed my first game in 4th grade on Apple II way back when, and those opportunities just aren't there for much of the state. And part of the issue is you have to have certain credits to graduate, and there was no place to fit in programming as an elective. It was a business elective was the only place you could put it. Who's taking business electives wanting to do programming?
Yeah, that's kind of like a funny story with me because like in Louisiana, it was kind of similar, especially back when I was like in high school. Like about around then, that was kind of like the turn of when everybody was really, starting to understand like more about like, oh, computer science and programming and everything is important back when I was in high school. And my high school didn't have any of that. They didn't. So I actually had to, it was just me. I actually managed to like petition the principal, who I happen to be on good terms with, to like get programming
Good for
as
you.
a course.
Yeah, excellent.
I had to sign a waiver promising I wouldn't use any of my program. I am not even joking. I had to sign a waiver.
You wouldn't hack the computer?
I wouldn't hack or make a virus. I wouldn't hack anything or make any viruses. I had to.
Did you keep that promise? No answer. That's all right. That's very good.
That's kind of like you kind of have to really kind of like hustle in this business.
That's exactly what I'm
do.
talking about the when I was saying just start doing stuff.
Right.
Don't look at things as obstacles. Just figure out how to get past them. That's a perfect example.
Yeah.
The other thing, which I just throw in there, if you're in the Georgia area and you're going to do the other things, know this guy. This is the guy to know around here.
And if you're in the Southeast, come out to Siege anyway. We're going to try to get the Louisianans out there.
No, please do. God, please do. Please do.
We'll talk about tax credits next.
Where all are you guys from?
I am from Lafayette, Louisiana, myself.
Originally, I'm scary Virginia Hill folk. So
So
Blacksburg. No. I'm Atlanta now. Yeah. Well, north of Atlanta.
North of Atlanta. He can say he's Atlanta. I'm in Tucka, and I can say I'm Atlanta.
Yeah.
He's up in...
We say we're outside the perimeter.
Yeah,
I'm originally from Conyers, just right outside of Atlanta, but I live in Tampa now. But I have an identical twin brother who lives in Savannah, so that still counts.
It's definitely in Georgia. Yeah.
And we'll try and make Orlando part of
Or
it.
use his ID.
Well, thank you very much for inviting us out to this, Mark. It's
Yeah,
great.
Thanks for
Thanks.
joining us. It's
Appreciate
a
it.
great conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, take care, everybody.
Thanks.